There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. For me, it wasn't the divorce, though heaven knows that cut deep enough. It wasn't selling my marketing firm for 8 figures either, though that changed everything in tangible ways. No, the moment that truly split my life in two happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening at a charity gala I almost didn't attend. I can still feel the weight of that evening. The oppressive Miami humidity that made my silk dress cling to my skin, the sparkling lights of downtown reflected in the bay, the murmur of conversation punctuated by the clink of champagne flutes. I was 50 years old, recently divorced, and inhabiting a strange new world of my own making. My oceanfront villa in Key Biscayne had become both sanctuary and prison, a beautiful, empty space echoing with the absence of the marriage I'd finally admitted was beyond saving. That night, I'd almost called my assistant to make my excuses. I'd been feeling particularly raw, having spent the afternoon sorting through James's remaining belongings. 23 years of marriage reduced to a few boxes of cologne-scented shirts and gold cufflinks. But something, intuition, fate, or simply the fear of another night alone with my thoughts, had pushed me to attend. Diana Miller. The voice cut through the buzzing crowd, and I turned to see Caroline Bennett, an old client from my marketing days, waving me over. I thought you were in Europe until next month. I kissed her cheek, inhaling her familiar scent of gardenias. Change of plans. The villa in Positano had plumbing issues. Well, their loss is our gain. Come, there's someone you absolutely must meet. That's how these things always go at Miami functions. A parade of introductions, most forgettable, a few useful for business. I followed Caroline through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces as we passed. The ballroom of the Four Seasons was transformed for the evening, all crystal and candlelight, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Biscayne Bay. Caroline stopped beside a small group deep in conversation. "Mark," she said, touching the arm of a man with his back to us. "There's someone here you need to know." He turned, and something shifted in the universe. That sounds melodramatic, I know. At 50, I thought I was well past the age of such fanciful notions. But there's no other way to describe it. He wasn't conventionally handsome in that Miami Beach way, not the polished, tanned financier type I'd grown accustomed to. There was something unfinished about him, something authentic. Dark hair cut short but slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. Clear blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. And he was smiling at me, extending his hand. "Mark Robinson," he said, his voice a low timbre that seemed to vibrate through me. "You're the famous Diana Miller." I felt momentarily unbalanced. I doubt famous is the right word. Yes, it is in marketing circles. Your campaign for Eclipse Cosmetics changed the industry narrative on aging. I've used it as a case study with several clients. I blinked, surprised by his knowledge. Most people at these events knew me as James Miller's ex-wife, or that woman with the art collection. Few remembered my professional accomplishments with such precision. "You work in marketing?" I asked, accepting the glass of champagne a waiter offered. "Finance, actually. But I consult for tech startups, and marketing strategy is critical for them." He gestured toward the windows. "Would you mind if we stepped outside?" "It's getting a bit warm in here." The terrace was mercifully quiet, the evening air heavy with the scent of the sea and night-blooming jasmine. Miami spread before us, a dazzling constellation of lights. "So?" he said, leaning against the balustrade. "Caroline tells me you've just returned from Kyoto." "I've been trying to get there for years. It's worth the trip," I replied, surprised again. The autumn leaves were extraordinary. I've heard the Arashiyama bamboo grove is transformative at dawn. I studied him more carefully. He was younger than I'd initially thought. Mid-30s, perhaps. His suit was impeccably tailored, but understated. No flashy watch or designer labels screaming for attention. "It is," I agreed. Though I confess I didn't manage dawn. Jet lag had me visiting at a more civilized hour. He laughed, and the sound did something strange to my chest. "Honesty. Refreshing at an event like this. You're not enjoying the gala?" "It serves a purpose," he said, taking a sip of his drink. "But I find these events exhausting. Too much performance, not enough substance." I nodded, understanding perfectly. The eternal dance of Miami high society. And yet here we are, participating. For a good cause, I reminded him. The gala was raising funds for marine conservation, a cause I'd supported for years. True. He turned slightly, facing me more directly. Though I suspect we both have our ulterior motives for attending. Oh, and what's yours? His smile deepened, revealing a small dimple in his left cheek. Professional networking, primarily. Yours? I considered lying, offering some polished response about community engagement. Instead, I found myself saying, fear of another evening alone with my thoughts. The words hung between us, unexpectedly intimate. I immediately regretted them. I should get back inside, I said, straightening. Diana! The way he said my name stopped me. Would you have dinner with me sometime? I'd love to hear more about your work in Japan. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Was he asking me on a date? The idea seemed absurd. He was clearly in his 30s. I was 50. These things didn't happen outside of cliched movies. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said carefully. I'm not. I'm not misunderstanding anything, he interrupted gently. I'd like to have dinner with you. A professional conversation, if that makes you more comfortable. But I'd prefer honesty between us. Honesty, I repeated, finding myself at a rare loss for words. Yes. So honestly, I find you intriguing and would like to know you better. Over dinner, no expectations beyond good food and conversation. I should have politely declined. Instead, I heard myself say, I know a wonderful little place in Coral Gables. They make a risotto that would convince an Italian grandmother. His smile was like sunrise. I'll trust your recommendation. We exchanged numbers, and I rejoined the gala, with my heart beating in an unfamiliar rhythm. Nothing would come of it, I told myself. A pleasant dinner with an interesting younger man. Nothing more. I was wrong. We met 3 days later at Cafe Luciano, a small Italian restaurant tucked away from the main thoroughfare. The owner, Paolo, greeted me with his usual warmth, kissing both my cheeks and leading us to my favorite table in the courtyard, sheltered by a massive bougainvillea. Mark arrived precisely on time, dressed simply in dark jeans and a crisp white shirt. No designer logos, no ostentation, just a quiet confidence that I found increasingly appealing. This is perfect, he said, looking around at the courtyard with its string lights and climbing flowers. How did you find it? I helped Paolo's daughter launch her jewelry line years ago. He's been feeding me risotto ever since. Dinner was revelatory. We talked for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from business to art to travel. He told me about growing up in a small town in Massachusetts, his move to Miami 5 years ago, his passion for restoring vintage timepieces. I shared stories from my marketing days, my recent solo travels, my newfound love of painting. So why finance? I asked as we lingered over espresso. It seems an odd choice for someone with your obvious creative inclinations. He considered the question seriously. I'm good with patterns, with seeing the connections between seemingly unrelated data points. Finance is just another form of storytelling, really. Narratives expressed in numbers rather than words. That's poetic. Don't tell my colleagues. They prefer their stereotypes intact. His eyes crinkled with humor. And why marketing for you? With your eye for composition, I'd have expected you in the arts. My father was a practical man. Art is for hobbyists, Diana. Business is for making a living. Marketing was our compromise. Creativity with a paycheck. And now? Now I paint when I want to, consult when it interests me, and try to figure out what the next chapter looks like. And what does it look like? He asked, his gaze intent. I looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. Uncertain, that's the honest answer. Uncertainty can be fertile ground, he said quietly. It's where possibility lives. When we parted that night, he kissed my cheek, a gesture so gentle it nearly broke me. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Diana. Thank you for asking, I replied, meaning it sincerely. We began seeing each other regularly after that. Dinners, art exhibitions, walks along the shoreline near my home. Always in public, always careful. I told myself we were becoming friends, nothing more. The age gap made anything else impossible, inappropriate even. But there was an undeniable current between us, a tension that grew with each meeting. I found myself thinking about him at odd moments, wondering what he would say about the book I was reading, or how he would react to the sunset painting I was struggling with. 6 weeks after our first dinner, he invited me to his apartment to see his collection of vintage watches. It was a transparent excuse, we both knew it, but I accepted anyway. His home surprised me. A spacious loft in a converted warehouse in Wynwood, walls lined with bookshelves and art. No sleek, soulless bachelor pad, but a space that reflected his eclectic interests. One wall was dedicated to his watch restoration workbench, precision tools laid out methodically beside half-completed projects. "This is impressive," I said, examining a delicate pocket watch movement under his magnifying lamp. "Where did you learn to do this?" "My grandfather was a watchmaker," he explained, standing close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "He taught me the basics when I was a boy. I've been teaching myself the rest. It's beautiful work. Beauty and precision," he agreed, "in getting all the parts to work together in perfect harmony." I looked up from the watch to find him watching me, his expression thoughtful. "Why did you invite me here tonight, Mark?" "You know why. I need to hear you say it." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something with notes of cedar and bergamot. "I invited you because I'm tired of pretending that what's happening between us isn't happening, because I wanted to be alone with you, without an audience, without the careful distance we've been maintaining." My heart hammered painfully in my chest. "This is complicated. Only if we make it so. I'm 50 years old. I'm aware of your age, Diana. It's irrelevant to how I feel about you." "And how do you feel?" I asked, scarcely breathing. Instead of answering with words, he reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with exquisite tenderness. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the sensation. "Look at me," he said softly. I opened my eyes to find his face inches from mine, his blue eyes intent. "I'm going to kiss you now," he murmured. "Unless you tell me not to." I should have stopped him, should have given all the logical reasons why this was a terrible idea. Instead, I found myself leaning into him, my hands coming up to rest against his chest as his lips met mine. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, and then suddenly it wasn't. Years of carefully maintained control shattered as I pressed closer, one hand sliding up to the nape of his neck. He made a sound low in his throat, his arms encircling me, pulling me against the solid warmth of his body. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Diana," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "Tell me you want this too." "I do," I admitted, the words torn from somewhere deep inside me. "God help me, I do." That night marked the beginning of something I'd never expected to experience again. A consuming passion, yes, but also a deepening connection that transcended the physical. We began spending most evenings together, either at his loft or my villa, talking for hours about everything and nothing. He would read to me from the poetry books that lined his shelves, his voice giving new life to verses I'd long loved. I taught him about impressionist painters, delighting in his fresh perspective. On weekends, we'd take my boat out into the bay, dropping anchor in secluded spots where we could swim and talk and make love under the vast Florida sky. He showed me parts of Miami I'd never known existed. Small jazz clubs in Overtown, hidden garden cafes in Little Haiti, a secret speakeasy accessed through a bookstore basement. For the first time since my divorce, perhaps for the first time ever, I felt truly seen. Not as James Miller's elegant wife, not as the marketing genius behind a successful agency, not as the wealthy divorcee with the oceanfront property. Just as Diana, with all my complexities and contradictions. But reality has a way of intruding, even on the most perfect dream. 3 months into our relationship, we attended a gallery opening together. It wasn't a deliberate debut as a couple. We'd simply grown tired of hiding. Mark's hand rested lightly on the small of my back as we moved through the crowded space, a casual intimacy that felt both thrilling and terrifying. I spotted Caroline across the room, her eyebrows raising fractionally as she registered our closeness. She made her way over, air kissing my cheeks before turning a speculative gaze on Mark. "Mark Robinson," she said, her voice deliberately neutral. "What a surprise to see you here. I didn't realize you were interested in contemporary sculpture." "Diana's been expanding my artistic horizons," he replied easily, his hand still warm against my back. Caroline's eyes flickered between us, a small smile playing at her lips. "How educational." "Diana, darling, Luis was just asking about you. He's by the installation in the East Gallery." It was a transparent attempt to separate us, but I went along with it, squeezing Mark's arm before following Caroline. As soon as we were out of earshot, she turned to me, her expression a mix of concern and fascination. "Diana, what are you doing?" "Viewing art, obviously." "Don't be coy. You and Mark Robinson, he's, what, 35? 33, I corrected automatically, then winced at the admission. "My God, it's true." She pulled me into a quiet corner. "Have you lost your mind? He's younger than your niece." "By 2 years," I said defensively. "And it's not what you think." "No? Because it looks like you're having an affair with a man young enough to be your son." Her words stung, precisely because they voiced my own deepest fears. "It's not an affair, I don't know what it is, but it's real." Caroline's expression softened slightly. "Oh, Diana, I'm not judging you. Well, maybe a little, but I'm worried. What happens when he wants children? When the novelty wears off?" I had no answer for her, because these were the same questions that kept me awake at night, even as Mark slept peacefully beside me. Later that evening, as we walked along the moonlit shoreline of my private beach, I found myself uncharacteristically quiet. "You're thinking about what Caroline said," Mark observed, his fingers laced with mine. I stopped walking, turning to face the ocean. "How could I not?" She only articulated what everyone will think, what they'll say behind our backs. Or worse, to our faces. "Since when do you care what people think?" "I don't, usually. But this is different." I looked up at him, searching his face in the silvery light. "Mark, be honest with me. What are we doing here? Where is this going?" He was quiet for a long moment, the sound of the waves filling the silence between us. "I don't have all the answers, Diana. I know that I've never felt this way about anyone before. I know that when I'm not with you, I'm thinking about you. I know that you challenge me, inspire me, make me laugh like no one else. But, no buts. Just acknowledgement that yes, there are complications. There are questions we'll need to answer. Like children," I said, my voice barely audible over the surf. "You might want them someday." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as a sign of deep thought. "Maybe. I haven't ruled it out. But that's not a decision I need to make tonight, or even this year." "And what about when I'm 60 and you're still in your 40s? When I need reading glasses to see the menu and you're still in your prime?" "Diana." He took my face in his hands, his eyes serious in the moonlight. "Do you think I don't know who you are? Your age is the least interesting thing about you. You're more vital, more engaged with life than most 30-year-olds I know." "But, no buts," he repeated firmly. "We can't predict the future. No one can. All we can do is decide if what we have right now is worth fighting for." His thumbs brushed my cheekbones gently. "I think it is. Do you?" Looking into his eyes, I wanted desperately to believe him, to believe in us. "Yes," I whispered. "I do." He kissed me then, deep and sure, and for a while I let myself forget everything but the feel of him, the sound of the waves, the scent of salt and jasmine on the night air. But doubts, once given voice, are difficult to silence completely. Over the following weeks, I began noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way heads turned when we entered restaurants together, the speculative glances, the occasional whispers. Most were merely curious, but some were openly judgmental. I found myself growing more reserved in public, pulling back from Mark's touch, creating distance where there had been none before. He noticed, of course. Mark noticed everything. "You're shutting me out," he said one evening as we sat on my terrace, the sunset painting the sky in shades of coral and gold. "Ever since that gallery opening, you've been different." I swirled the wine in my glass, unable to meet his eyes. I'm trying to be realistic. Realistic? He repeated flatly. About what exactly? About us. About the challenges we're facing. About whether this relationship has a future or if we're just postponing the inevitable. And what do you think is inevitable, Diana? I set my glass down, finally looking at him directly. That someday you'll realize you want more than I can give you. A family. A wife who can grow old with you at the same pace. Someone who fits neatly into your life without complications. He was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood abruptly, walking to the edge of the terrace. Do you want to know what I think? He asked, his back to me. I think you're looking for excuses. I think you're so afraid of being hurt again that you're willing to sabotage something extraordinary to avoid the risk. His words hit with the force of truth. That's not fair. Isn't it? He turned, and I was shocked to see the pain in his eyes. You talk about me wanting children someday as if it's a foregone conclusion, but you've never actually asked me what I want. You assume I'll leave because of our age difference, but you're the one creating distance between us. I stood too, suddenly angry. Because I'm trying to be pragmatic. Because I'm 50 years old and I've already been through one devastating heartbreak. Because the idea of letting myself love you completely terrifies me. The words escaped before I could stop them, hanging in the air between us. I'd never said the word love before, had carefully avoided it in my own thoughts. Mark crossed the space between us in 3 strides, taking my hands in his. Say that again, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Which part? I asked, trying and failing to sound casual. The part where you admitted you're falling in love with me. I looked down at our joined hands. I didn't say that exactly. Diana. The way he said my name, like a prayer, like a plea, undid me completely. Fine, yes, I'm falling in love with you. Against my better judgment, against all logic. Are you satisfied? His smile was blinding. Not even close. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight against his chest. I love you too, you know. Have for months now. I pressed my face into his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. This doesn't solve anything. It solves everything, he countered, stroking my hair. Everything else is just details. That night, as we lay tangled together in my bed, I allowed myself to believe him. To imagine a future where our love was enough to overcome the obstacles before us. But in the quiet hours before dawn, as Mark slept beside me, my doubts returned like unwelcome ghosts. 2 days later, Mark informed me that his firm was sending him to London for 3 weeks to work with a new client. It was a significant opportunity, one he couldn't refuse. I'll call every day, he promised, his arms around me as we stood in my kitchen. And when I get back, I want us to talk seriously about our future. Our future, I repeated, the phrase both wonderful and terrifying. Yes, I have some ideas I want to share with you. He kissed me softly. But they can wait until I return. Just promise me you'll be here, that you won't retreat behind those walls you're so skilled at building. I promise, I said, meaning it in that moment. The first week of his absence was bearable. We spoke daily, sometimes for hours, sharing the details of our days. I told him about the new painting I was working on, a seascape inspired by our walks along the shore. He described London's autumn chill, so different from Miami's perpetual summer. But as the days stretched into the second week, a familiar anxiety began to gnaw at me. I found myself obsessively checking social media, looking at photos of Mark at business events, analyzing the beautiful young women who appeared in group pictures with him. I imagined him realizing, there in London, far from the intoxication of our relationship, that he was tying himself to a woman whose best years were behind her. When Caroline called, inviting me to lunch at her club, I accepted out of a desperate need for distraction. You look terrible, she announced as I joined her at the table. Trouble in paradise? Mark's in London for work, I said, unfolding my napkin. I'm just tired. She studied me over the rim of her martini glass. And this separation has you questioning everything, I'd wager. I sighed, too exhausted to deny it. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's known you for 20 years. She set down her glass. Diana, you know I love you. which is why I'm going to be brutally honest. This relationship with Mark, it's not sustainable. Not because of your age, but because of your fear. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. You're scared to death of being vulnerable again, of needing someone who might leave. So you're looking for reasons it won't work, creating problems where they don't exist yet. I stared at her, stunned by the accuracy of her assessment. The question isn't whether Mark is too young for you, she continued relentlessly. It's whether you're brave enough to take a chance on happiness again. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing everything you can to sabotage it. Her words stayed with me long after our lunch, echoing in my mind as I wandered through my empty house. Was she right? Was I the architect of my own unhappiness? That night, unable to sleep, I found myself in my studio, looking at the unfinished seascape on my easel. It captured the exact spot where Mark and I had walked countless times, where we'd had our most intimate conversations. The colors were vibrant, alive in a way my earlier work had never been. I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number, not caring that it was 3 a.m. in London. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. Diana, is everything all right? No, I said honestly. Everything is not all right. I'm sitting here missing you and terrified that I'm going to lose you, and I don't know how to stop thinking these thoughts. There was a brief silence. Then he said, I was planning to tell you when I got back, but maybe this is better. I've been offered a position at the London office, a promotion, more responsibility. They want an answer by next week. My heart seemed to stop. You're moving to London. I'm considering it, he corrected gently. But my decision depends entirely on you. On me? Diana, I don't want a life without you in it. If you want me to stay in Miami, I'll stay. If you want to try long distance for a while, we can do that. Or ... He hesitated, then continued. Or you could come with me. To London? The idea seemed fantastical, impossible. Why not? You can consult from anywhere. You've been talking about wanting a change, a new challenge. This could be it. A fresh start for both of us, away from the whispers and judgments. I sat down heavily on my painting stool, mind racing. You're asking me to uproot my entire life. I'm asking you to consider building a new one. With me. Because I love you, Diana. More than I ever thought possible. And I want a future with you. Whether that's in Miami or London or the moon, I don't care. As long as we're together. His words hung in the silence between us. A declaration and a question all at once. I need time to think, I said finally. This is a lot to process. Take all the time you need, he replied, his voice warm with understanding. I'm not going anywhere. At least, not without talking to you first. After we hung up, I sat in my studio until dawn, watching the sky lighten over the ocean. Mark's offer represented everything I'd been afraid to want. A future built on love rather than convenience or social expectation. A chance to start over, not as James Miller's ex-wife or Diana the marketing executive, but simply as myself, with a man who saw me clearly and loved what he saw. Could I do it? Leave the safety of the life I'd built, the home that had become my fortress, the city I knew like the back of my hand? For a man 17 years my junior, whose love felt like both miracle and mirage? As the first rays of sunlight streaked across my canvas, illuminating the waves I'd painted with such care, I knew my answer. Mark returned from London on a Thursday, coming directly to my villa from the airport. I opened the door to find him standing there, travel-worn but smiling, a small blue box in his hand. What's this? I asked as he stepped inside. Open it, he urged, placing it in my palm. Inside was a perfect miniature pocket watch, no bigger than a quarter, hanging from a delicate gold chain. The face was mother of pearl, the hands frozen at 4:17. It's beautiful, I said, lifting it carefully. But why is it stopped? It's not stopped, he explained, taking it from me and turning it over. The back was transparent, revealing the intricate mechanism within. It's set to the exact moment we met. 4:17 p.m. at the charity gala. I had to check the timestamp on the photo Caroline took of us. I stared at him, speechless with emotion. I made it, he continued softly. For you? So you'd always remember that moment when everything changed. I looked down at the exquisite gift, tears blurring my vision. Mark, Before you say anything else, he interrupted gently, I need you to know something. I'm declining the London position. What? Why? Because I realized something while I was away. Home isn't London or Miami or any particular place. Home is where you are. He took my hands in his blue eyes serious. If you want to come to London with me, I'd be overjoyed. If you want to stay here, I'll stay too. If you want to sell everything and sail around the world, I'm in. As long as we're together. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. I have a counter-proposal. His eyebrows rose in surprise. I'm listening. I've been thinking a lot about what you said before you left, about our future. And I've realized something too. I squeezed his hands. I've spent the last 2 years of my life hiding in this house, afraid to start over, afraid to be vulnerable again. And then you came along and showed me that there was still so much life to be lived, so many experiences waiting for me. For us. Diana, let me finish, I said, needing to get the words out. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to be brave. Brave enough to love you completely, without reservations or conditions. Brave enough to build a life with you, wherever that takes us. His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. So, does that mean— It means yes, I said simply. Yes to London, yes to us, yes to whatever comes next. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight against his heart. I love you, he whispered into my hair. So much. I love you too, I replied, the words no longer frightening but freeing. Later that evening, as we stood on my terrace watching the sunset for one of the last times, the villa already on the market, our plans for London taking shape, Mark wrapped his arms around me from behind. Any regrets? He asked softly. I leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength of his chest, the steady beat of his heart. Only that I wasted so much time being afraid. We have all the time in the world, he assured me, his lips brushing my temple. And in that moment, with the Miami sky ablaze with color, and the man I loved holding me close, I believed him. The future stretched before us. Uncertain, yes, but filled with possibility, with love, with the promise of a life lived fully, bravely, without fear. This is my confession. At 50 years old, I learned that it's never too late to start over, that love doesn't follow rules or timelines or societal expectations, that the heart wants what it wants, regardless of age or circumstance, and that sometimes the greatest risk of all is refusing to take one. As the last light faded from the sky, I turned in Mark's arms to face him. Take me to London, I whispered. Show me our future. His kiss was a promise, a vow, a beginning. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. No longer afraid, but brave. No longer alone, but loved. This is my truth, my confession, my love story.